So yes, I just want to say thanks for the introduction, Bob. Thank you, Katie, for considering me to come and speak, and Susan for making it all happen and putting it all together, so I appreciate you bringing that all together. The last time I spoke at Unity was in 2014, and it was June 16th that I actually spoke on Father's Day here in 2013. So there is going to be a little bit of an overlap. I don't know how good your memory is. You remember everything that I talked about then. Maybe you won't. I certainly don't. But we will follow a little bit of the same format. Prior to that time, I wrote something called Parenting Code. And if you are interested in it, there is a handout at the back. When you're on your way out, you can grab that and take it with you. So just to continue on with that, a little bit more of my background is that when I grew up, my one grandfather, my dad's dad, had died before I was born. And my mom's grandfather died when I was 3. My dad left home, I think he left our home when I was a year old. So my experience of parenting and fathering was all by guess and by golly, because I really didn't have a whole lot of an idea what that looked like with any sense of clarity. What we're going to do is I'm going to touch on a few topics from the Parenting Code. I'm going to tie some of it into A Course in Miracles and how I have been able to use some of that. As well, we'll also go into a meditation before we finish off. So hopefully everybody can stay with me on this, and we will go through and do that. Just as a note as well, with my 3 sons, they are, the youngest is 31, and the oldest is 37. So I've come through the actual parenting, and now I get to watch them as they parent their kids, which is really something great to see. One of the first topics from the Parenting Code is children are a gift from God, they're not possessions. And so if we can hold that idea whenever we are around children, with our own and with grandchildren, it gives us a foundation. That actually comes from Psalms 127 verse 3. And the part about not being possessions actually comes from the shamanistic tradition that all children are gifts and they're not possessions. So we are to treat them with divine reverence. And when we do that, our life shifts on how we look at the world. The next one I'm going to talk about is every no takes a child further away from their divine nature. Excuse me. What that actually means, they're born as love, and they come into this world just free as a free spirit of love. Yet, as time goes on, what happens is we as parents take our fears and say no to our children. And when we say no to our children, every no gives them a further and further gap away from their divine connection. So it's really mindful that rather than saying no, we redirect our children and give them an idea of how or where they should do things as opposed to what they shouldn't. And this awareness became really abundantly clear for me. I was taking a university class, and the professor said, "Speak your truth. Tell me something that is an absolute truth for you." And so I told him, and his only answer to me was no. And immediately I went into defense, and I wanted to justify my position, and I wanted to be right. And the Course in Miracles talks about that. It says that the defense is our justification of our fear. So when we're saying no to children, what we're doing is we're projecting our fear on them. And it's important that we keep our fear in check. Next one is children are their parents' greatest teachers. And if you have more than one child, you'll recognize that not all children will respond the same way, either by birth order or by gender or whatever. They're not going to even they're just not going to respond the same way. So they're going to teach us how. We'll teach them how to function in this world. Their job is to teach us how to do that. And what that requires is a lot of humility and curiosity. The next one is the parent's role is to guide their children to become full functioning adults in their own right. And if we can hold that thought in mind before we even have children, then what we're able to do is look at where the end is. And we can see the end, but they, as yet, can't. And I know I wanted to be a dad before, when I was little, I just wanted to be a dad, and I knew that was what was there for me. And in raising my kids, keeping this idea in mind that they're going to be my teachers, what I would do is I would lay out rules for them. And sometimes they liked the rules, and sometimes they didn't. And when they would challenge the rules, I gave them an opportunity to do so. They could come up with sound reason for why it should be different than what I offered to them. And if they could come up with something that I hadn't thought of, then they usually got what they wanted. It happened sometimes, not always, but what it did is it gave them some skills to actually function in the world. And my one son was 7 years old, and at the time, the three of them, two of them wanted to go and get a game at Office Depot. I don't know how many of you remember Office Depot, it hasn't been around for a while. But we went to Office Depot, and before we went, I said, if you want to buy anything, take money. And my 7-year-old absolutely refused. No, not taking any money, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to buy anything. And so we went, the other two were looking, shopping around with games, and my 7-year-old came up to me and said, Dad, the package of sticky notes. He said, Dad, you can buy me these. And I said, do you have any money? No. Well, then you can't have them. Wandering around the store a little further, he came up with a package of markers. And he said, Dad, you can buy me these. And I said, do you have any money? Where are you going with this? And he said, no, I don't. I said, well, you got to put them away. And as we were going to check out, he came up to the stand and he had the sticky notes, the colored sticky notes. He had the marking pens and he said, Dad, you can buy me these, or you can buy me these, or you can buy me both. So it was just an instant click. He had learned the art of sales. You give your customer a choice, 1, 2, or 3, and obviously he got number 3. He got it. Oh, he was a dandy salesman. The other thing that I'll just talk about briefly is around building rituals. So with my kids, I thought that it was important that we have some kind of traditions or something that came along for our children so that they could carry on or carry forward with their kids, or at least enjoy and remember their childhood. What I did, as soon as they were all born, I would rub their feet and put them to sleep. And that was kind of where it started, and then I would rub their back. And then when they were out playing sports, if they got injured, they would come, Dad, can you massage my leg? Can you massage me? Because I've been, they played hard and they got hit pretty hard. And it would help them get back into the game. But currently, there's one of my sons that still, whenever we're together and we're sitting down or we're at home, their homes are mine, he'll lay on the floor, put his feet up on my lap, and start wiggling his toes. So in his 30s, he still wants footballs. The other thing that I did once I got divorced, I wanted to pass on something that they would appreciate from their childhood around food. And so I like cabbage rolls and I enjoy eating them. However, I only make them once a year. It takes 2 days. I'll make 100 pounds of cabbage rolls. And what happens, and they take them, they don't say too much when I give them their packages of cabbage rolls at Christmas time. But their wives have all come up to me and said, they hide them. And they won't share. They keep them to themselves. So although my kids won't tell me they like them, they definitely appreciate them, and so it's a ritual that they've taken on. And what's the benefit of that is that at this point, they are all excellent cooks. And they can make some pretty fantastic food. We're going to move into teenage years, and these were some of the most interesting times, having children. And the thing that came to mind as we were going through this is that children are supposed to challenge everything we ever taught them up until the age of 12 or 13. Up until that time, they're compliant, they just absorb everything and take it in and say, okay, well, mom and dad are right, and they're bigger and they're stronger, and obviously they know something more. And then there's that puberty that hits and the hormone surge, and at that point, it's like, you, as a parent, have become the dumbest person on earth. When one of my sons was 12, I said, he said, Dad, you're pretty smart. And I said, hold that thought, because in about 4 years you'll think otherwise. When he was 16, he came into the kitchen, and as he came into the kitchen, his comment was, he made a comment about me being dumb, and I said, so now you think I'm the dumbest person on earth? And I told you that 4 years ago, and he said, oh, you had to prove yourself right. He's got a point. And what we are is their gnawing stick. So what that refers to is that they go into the teenage years, as 12 years old, and we can kind of relate back to that. We trusted everything that happened, but then there's a point that we know, and we want to have the liberties of being an adult. We want to be able to go out and do things and have those freedoms. Yet, in the same token, we don't want to have the responsibility. And as kids go into those teenage years, they know they can't go back to that place of safety and comfort where they were before. Their friends are more important. Everything that was there isn't quite the same. And so if you can imagine, as a parent, you become a ton. And this is where, for being a dad, it's really important to be the protector. And there's a difference in protection for moms and dads, because typically for moms will try and protect them from harming themselves. Whereas dads may not quite be so concerned about whether they get a cut or a scrape or a bruise or a burn, but dad's role is more to ensure that no one from the outside is going to harm their kids. And so both parents have a tremendous role in that. And where this came in, it came really clear to me, was a buddy of mine, and I'm going to go back to the comment just for a moment. So they're going into this tunnel of puberty that's dark, and they're a little afraid, and they don't want to go forward, and they don't want to go back, and they're in this confused state, and we kind of just keep on working them to the end where the light is, but the light is pretty faint at times. And again, it's to remember that our role as a parent, our role as a father, is to get them to be full functioning adults in their own right. So we can't keep on telling them what to do, but sometimes we have to give them an opportunity to experience things. And a buddy of mine, what he did with his daughter, she wanted to go out on a date. And she would have been 15, and a boy came to come and pick her up, and when he was coming to pick her up, he honked on the horn for her to come out. And my buddy said, no, he's got to come into the house. So he came up to the house, and when he came up to the house, the dad said, she has to be home, 10:30, she's got to be home. If she's not home, I'm coming looking for you. He wasn't going out looking for his daughter, he was going looking for her. He was going looking for the boy to make sure that he knew that he had to take responsibility for what was going on. Another thing that I learned out of parenting was that teenagers will not talk to you as a parent. Very rarely. One of my sons, for about 3 years, the best I could ever get out of him was breakfast, Going to school? No. Do you need something? No. And that was his response all the time. Like there was no communication, yet I could sit in the same room and I could text him, and he would respond. Just not verbal. So to try and find out what was going on, what I learned is that they would have parties, and as was mentioned in the introduction, I worked as a firefighter, and so there were weekends that I had to work, and I couldn't be home when the weekends would happen, and I would go to work and say, when I'm at work, no parties. When I would get home in the morning and come in, the place was clean. Now, there's no way that my kids were going to clean up. And so I would move the couches and look around, and I would see bottle caps and see stuff on the floor, and I knew that there was a party, because the girls that were there would come and clean up at the end of the party before they went home, but they wouldn't move the furniture around to check and see, to get all the stuff from underneath. So I knew full well that they were having parties. But what was really, really great was when I was at home, I did make a good effort to ensure that I got to meet their friends. And if you ever want to find out what's going on with your kids, feed their friends. So party was on, I would get out 4 or 5 pounds of bacon, and they would all gradually come up wanting bacon. They wanted, what teenager does not want food? And so if I fed their friends as they were waiting for the bacon to cook, and it takes a while to cook 4 pounds of bacon, they would tell me what was going on with my kids, if they had any girlfriends, if they had any arguments, if they had any struggles, whatever going on. Their friends just skewed and poured it all out. So, again, tremendous lesson for me. If you want to know what's going on, if you want to know what's going on with any of your kids, feed their friends. The next topic I'm just going to touch on here is around the rite of passage. And in our society, we don't have the rite of passage for boys into manhood and for girls into womanhood. And it's something that's really important. And on that, one of the things that came up around that for me, around the learning about the importance of a rite of passage, was to do something so that they could take on responsibility. And so they like to wrestle, I like to wrestle with them. And when they were kids, we would have fun with that. As they got older and they got into be teenagers, I said, when you can wrestle and pin me on the floor, at that point, you are then capable. Then you can take on the responsibility of being protector of the family. And until they were ready to take on that responsibility, they could not pin me to the floor. At this point, they have all done that without any hesitation, and they've taken on the responsibility for themselves and their own families. It's not always been fun. One son was 21 years old. He was sitting at home, and he was going to university. He was playing a game on his computer, and I brought lunch in. And he said, Dad, so what do you think you're doing to contribute to my well-being? He had to pay for his transportation, he had to pay for his clothes, and he had to pay for his entertainment. And at 21, he was only taking 3 classes, not a full load. It's like, at that point, I was ready to just take my hands, put them around his neck, and say, the world does not deserve this creature. It took me over a day to be able to actually look at him and talk with him. I did. I talked to him and said, we're going to meet. We got into Livingston, and that was our place to discuss things. I said, you asked me what I'm doing for your well-being. He said, yeah. I said, well, obviously I'm not doing enough, and I'm impeding your development. My role is to guide you to be an adult, so you can live on the outside of the door. We spent about 2 hours discussing what was going on. He stayed 1 more semester, and after that he was out. It was after that he actually took on being responsible for himself. Just on a final note around my kids, as much as there are challenges, there's also great honors. It was a few years ago, my son was working on his house, and I went to give him a hand. And his girlfriend, his fiance, came up and said, did you ask him? Did you ask him? did you ask him? And I said, so what is it that he's supposed to ask me? And she said, well, did he ask you if I would perform the service for their wedding? One of the greatest honors of being a dad, one of the greatest honors of having an opportunity to parent, was to perform their wedding ceremony. And on August 12th, it'll be 5 years since they've been married. So, as on both ends, there's always great honor that comes with great challenges. And we'll just we'll get into a meditation pretty quickly, but I'll speak about grandparenting for just a moment. And what I've learned out of that is that my grandkids are teaching me how to play. Something that I had not learned as a kid, something I never was comfortable with as a parent. But it's great to see that. It's great to watch my kids play. And actually be curious, like a 5 or 6 or 7-year-old can be. And it's also great to be able to have the opportunity to find and recognize that divine source in them, even when their parents can't, and give them some support around that. So, on that note, the final comment, and I'll just leave this quite briefly, is with the Course in Miracles, our role as a parent, our role as a father, and this is Divine Father, this is the role of a father, is to just love them and see the divine in them every day, always. So, if you care to, we will go into a brief meditation. So you can get comfortable in your seat. Lower your gaze, if you care to, close your eyes. And just becoming aware of your breath. Become aware of your inhale. And become aware of your exhale. Recognizing that as you're breathing in, you're bringing oxygen in. It's a life-giving force. And when you're bringing that life-giving force in, what you're actually doing is bringing love in to your body, into your mind, into your being. And as you're exhaling, what you're doing is releasing any tension that may be anywhere within your body. Take a slow, deep breath next. Breathe and fill your lungs completely and hold for just a moment. And as you do so, exhale and release any tension that may be there. Breathing that loving energy in. One more breath. Breathe deeply. Fill your lungs, fill your diaphragm. Then exhale and surrender. And let that go. And now, with the next breath or two, if there's any place where there is any tension in your body, any pain, just bring your awareness, bring that loving energy in as you breathe into that space in your body. Exhale and surrender. And let that go. One more breath. Breathing the loving energy in, releasing any tension that you may be holding. And on this next breath, just become aware of any ideas that you're holding in your mind. Breathing love in, envelop them in love. Give yourself any attachment, whether you like the idea or dislike the idea. Allow the idea to pass as you surrender and exhale with gratitude and let it go. Breathe love in. Be aware that we are created as spirit, as love in our Father's mind. And exhale and surrender and let that go. Breathe love in. Recognizing that love is what gives us life. And exhale and surrender. And let that go. And now on this breath, breathe that loving energy in. Know and recognize that in our Father's mind, all our minds are one. In our Father's mind, we are never alone. And exhale and surrender. And let that go. And now with this next breath, realize and recognize that to share love means to extend it and offer it. And we can let that go. next breath, breathe that loving energy in. Feel the strength and power that comes with recognizing that you are a divine child of God. And exhale and surrender and let go. Breathing on in one more time. Become aware of the journey you're on, the space that we're in. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Father's love is to just love them.